So Judy, why do you think that so many people live payday to payday and don't have savings?
I think a lot of it stems from the ability to be able to get finance very easily. If you think about when you first left your education and you started earning money, all of a sudden a whole new world opens up to you where you can buy a brand new car on finance, for example. You get your first home, whether you're renting or buying, and then you can furnish your entire house on credit. And so very quickly, somebody's earning potential in the year can be fully consumed with credit, because everybody wants everything on demand today. Nobody's willing to wait anymore for a new car or nice furnishings, etc., or even holidays. It's just too easy for people to get finance in the UK.
But why is it important for employers to care about employees' financial well-being?
I think every employer has a responsibility to help and look after the well-being of their workforce, but that doesn't stop in work. Financial stress can make people quite anxious, quite ill, and that will have an impact on the quality of work, the productivity when they're in work. And for some people, the stress can be that overwhelming, they can actually end up on the sick because they're just all consumed about how they're going to cope with the financial situation that they're in. So if employers can help their employees be financially well, that can eradicate a huge proportion of time off that people are currently taking due to financial stress.
So there was some research done where they found out that 45% of UK working families have less than £250 in savings. What can be done for them?
Well, that's a very difficult one, isn't it? Because if people are genuinely living payday to payday, you can probably just about cope with your outgoings and with putting food on the table. But then what happens when some unforeseen expenditure arises, like one of your household appliances breaks, or your car breaks down, or it fails an MOT, you need new tyres? These are all things that we don't necessarily budget for, we just kind of moan about them when they happen. But if you are literally living payday to payday and you've got no savings at all, the only options people have got really are to go to payday loans, put it on a credit card, dare I say it, or potentially go down the route of an unauthorised overdraft. Now, all three of those have implications, longer term problems for the individual, because they're ending up getting themselves into debt just to solve a very short-term problem. They've now got a long-term debt problem. What we can do is through newer fintech, we're in a position now where we can enable employers to allow their employees to draw down pay earlier than payday, just to cover these unforeseen ad hoc payments that they need to make.
So we spoke about people using payday loans and overdrafts, but is it just the ad hoc scenarios where people use these means, or are there any other times people would delve into them?
Unfortunately, the research shows us that in some circumstances people are using payday loans to cover things like the grocery bills. Yeah, so they've paid out the rent, the mortgage, they've paid out the bills. Perhaps it's, the kids have just gone back to school and they've had to pay out extra for school uniforms, equipment and all that good stuff. And they can't afford to put food on the table. So people are using payday loans even for that, which is frightening.
So we spoke about the need for employers to help employees.
Yeah.
Surely going back to weekly payroll would solve that, would it not?
That's a really good question, and historically everybody used to be paid weekly, and then it was just sort of senior management that were paid monthly, and then there was a big drive to put everybody onto monthly pay because that reduces the number of payments you're making, therefore reducing the amount of bank charges to the employer. So you'd think a simple answer would be move everybody back to weekly and let their money be more accessible more quickly. For a lot of organisations, that's just not possible because they'd have to budget for that. And at the moment, if they're paying everybody monthly, then they're budgeting to 12 payments per year. They would have to do significant changes to their business plan in order to be able to make that change. It's not just a simple case of saying, let's make everybody weekly. My other concern about just flipping everybody onto weekly is you would really need to put some kind of an education plan in place for your employees, because if they're used to being paid monthly and they're budgeting to get all the bills paid monthly, then to flip them to weekly, are we going to inadvertently get them in debt where they spend all the money before the bills come out at the end of the month? So it can be done. One, if an organisation can afford it, and two, if you can put the effort in to educate people to make sure that it doesn't create another problem. Okay,
Julie, so what are the alternatives?
So with Flexipay, our payroll system, we have the ability to enable organisations to roll out an app to their employees, and if an employee needs to get their hands on some of their pay early, they can just draw it down through the app, and the employer doesn't have to worry about how they're going to fund that, because that's all funded through the offering. And then basically what happens is payroll runs at the end of the month as normal, and those advances that have been drawn down are repaid before the rest of the salary then goes into the employee's bank account.
So Julie, you mentioned that sometimes people don't have enough money to see them through to the end of the month. So if you're making that money available earlier, how are we going to stop that happening again?
When the app's implemented, the employer has the option to choose what rules they set, and those rules will dictate what, if anything, an employee is allowed to draw down. So you'd set rules up like they can only draw down money that they've actually earned. You may dictate that it can only be a percentage of their monthly pay, so perhaps 10%, 15%, 20%. Some might just choose you can only draw down overtime that you've earned and leave your salary. So those rules are in place to ensure that by fixing one problem, we're not creating another problem.
So we've spoken quite a lot about the benefits to the employees, but how does this benefit the employer?
There are several different benefits to an employer. The obvious one is they're contributing to their employees' financial wellness. Second one is for some organisations, they really struggle to attract and retain talent. This is a benefit to an employee. And if you as an employer are offering this benefit and your competitor down the road isn't, then you're highly likely to be able to attract the talent to your organisation. And another benefit is if you have unsociable hours that you really struggle for people to come forward and volunteer to do overtime for, so your Friday nights, your Saturdays, your Sundays, you can make those shifts more attractive by offering an instant payment. So when somebody's worked one of those unsociable shifts, when they're finishing the clock out, they can get paid like within 3 seconds of that shift, and that's an attraction for more people to sign up to do those unsociable hours.
Lastly then, Julie, in your opinion, why do you think employers should be doing this?
I think every employer has a responsibility to help with both the physical and mental well-being of their employees. This is just a great opportunity for employers to really support their employees through a difficult time that the UK is going through. And I'd kind of ask the question of every employer, I'd need them to tell me why they wouldn't do this, because I can't see a reason why every employer wouldn't come forward and want to do this and help their employees never get into sort of payday loan debt.